We're spending one night in Millstreet with the Monkey Man, and the First Omen is the beginning of trouble with Jessica. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Adam Ball, and this is Off Screen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Groovy.
Hello and welcome back to Off Screen then. So we've got a load of movies to look at. We're going to look at Monkey Man. We're going to look at The First Omen, The Trouble with Jessica in a moment. I just thought I'd start by asking you, Van, if there is any movie gossip or any movie news that you would like to highlight at the start of the show today.
Any movie news that I'd like to highlight at the start of the show? I don't know, to be honest. You've put me on the spot now. I don't know what's been going on.
You've been too busy sitting on these seats at red carpet events.
I've been absorbing all of the actual film content the past week or so because it's just been non-stop. And we had 8 films last week, and then we briefly had 5. We're down to 4 this one, and you're already starting to see stuff for next week and a couple of weeks in advance. So it's been quite nuts. And next week's the Amy Winehouse Civil War week, so things are pretty rammed at the minute in terms of the news. I'm not really up on them.
Well, I was just chatting to you before we started recording about something I saw recently. I mean, it's not new, but Sinister was quite an average horror movie that I watched. It was all right. It did fine with a Saturday night and a bottle of red wine in the other half. But I probably won't be watching the second one. We'll put it that way.
Well, first of all, I've got a bone to pick with you, and do this publicly as well, because you asked me what to watch, and I suggested the 1996 forgotten Val Kilmer, Michael Douglas African lion hunter tale classic that was The Ghost in the Darkness. And I'm going to assume, since you haven't texted me at any point to thank me for introducing this wonderful film into your life, that means you didn't watch it.
Well, I'll be honest with this. I put it on, and my other half went, Van's given us something from the Dark Ages. Can we find something else?
And you went with Sinister. Well, you know what? You reap what you sow. You will rue this day. Go on, start ruining.
Yeah, well, I'll get round to it, but maybe when I'm on my own, it's probably the best option. All right, let's start with The Trouble with Jessica then. I can't quite figure out the genre of this movie. Is it like a comedy horror or what?
Right. I'm going to give you the plot first, and then I'll give you the trailer clip, and then we'll see, and then we'll talk about that tone, because that's a big part of what there is to say about The Trouble with Jessica. So I was initially sold this via a press release from a publicist. I hadn't seen the trailer. It's a British film. It's about 2 middle-class couples, both in their sort of late 40s, early 50s. On the one hand, you have the couple who is an architect, a struggling architect, played by Alan Tudyk, and his wife, Shirley Henderson. Everyone, by the way, is from North London, so this means Alan Tudyk is doing a North London accent. They are having dinner. They are in financial dire straits, and the only way they can afford to survive without going under completely is to sell their house. And so, before they give up the house, they want to have one last dinner party with their mates. They invite their couple mates, Rufus Sewell, who's a sort of sleazy lawyer who gets rape victims off, in a legal sense, obviously, and his hipster contrarian wife, played by Olivia Williams. They come over for dinner, and they've all known each other from going back to uni days, but they've known each other in different friendship configurations and different relationship dynamics. Olivia Williams' character then brings along a mutual frenemy of the group, the titular Jessica, played by Indira Varma, who is just the worst. And she is there for 20 minutes before Shirley Henderson can't take it anymore. It all comes to a head. They tell her off. She then wanders off, and a couple of minutes later they discover that she has taken her own life and hung herself in their garden, thus endangering their housing sale, because the buyer won't want their property if it's had a suicide in the garden. And so the friends must unite to how should we say, soften the criminal element of the situation. Have a listen to this clip and see if you get a particular tone with this.
An hour ago, we were just having dinner.
This is going to change everything. And she decided to kill herself in our garden right when we're trying to sell the house. I mean, who does that? Who goes and kills himself in someone else's garden? Why couldn't she just have killed herself in her own garden?
She'd never garden.
We have to deal with the situation. If the buyer finds out what has happened, he won't buy the house.
She did it here.
Or if she hadn't.
What about Beth and Richard?
They're our oldest friends.
There's always something with Jessica.
I would say, after listening to that, it comes under the heading Dramcom for me.
Right, this is the weird thing about it, because tonally it's a little bit all over the shop, and it's because different sets of production elements are playing at different tones and speeds here. So, what you've got are a group of really good film and TV actors, established performers who are performing this in a very cinematic sense. And then you've got a director and co-writer, Matt Wynn, I think it's Matt Wynn, who seems to be directing this as if it is a stage play. And the problem is the story can work for either, but it sits in the middle and it takes a very stilted kind of level of engagement and involvement. You've then got a score that seems to be of an entirely different third movie, where everything is this kind of madcap jazz riff meant to the improv nature of the jazz ramps up whenever it needs to propel tension. But it does so in a way that doesn't necessarily help with the confusion of, is this meant to be funny or is it meant to be quite gripping and dramatic? It frankly works on either level and both simultaneously, because the cast are very, very good in it. But because the movie has no sense of style and no sense of real character, you feel like you're being held back from it. You're not getting to enjoy it quite as much as you would have otherwise. This could have been absolutely banging, like with just a decent sense of cinematography and like just actual camera work. Like this could have been really something.
You could have had a really good soundtrack with it as well, because you could have had based it on 90s and set it in the 90s maybe, and had there's a 90s tunes playing at a dinner party, and you could have done quite a lot with it, really.
I'll be really honest, it would have been funnier given the age of the characters if they had done something like a 90s throwback thing with Magic 90s is on the Alexa on the
yes,
in the corner throughout, because obviously the age of someone in their late 40s to early 50s probably would have a lot of music from the 90s in there, so that kind of thing would make sense. But that is about ambience and production design, and that's the exact thing that this is lacking. And it's a shame, because I wasn't bored by the film. I kept thinking, oh, this is quite fun, I'm going with it. And the cast are all great. I think Rufus Sewell in particular, I had a great time with. And Shirley Henderson's good value for money. Alan Tudyk even manages to overcome that accent. And I checked, this is the third time I can remember Alan Tudyk bizarrely doing an English accent. The first time was A Knight's Tale in 2001. The second time was Death at a Funeral, which I think was 2007, and this would now make a third. Although, as Calvin Prickett did point out to me, he has also gone German in the Transformers movies and Bullock alcoholism rom-com, 28 Days, I think it was. But great cast all round. Weirdly, you've got Olivia Williams and Alan Tudyk both serving as Dollhouse alums. If you're keeping score on the Joss Whedon score chart, they both appeared in Dollhouse together at different stages. I really liked this. I just wish it was more of a film and less of a play. And the problem is, it's not that it's being performed less as a film than a play, because it's being performed as a film, but it's being captured as a play. And I was thinking, one of you needs to switch sides, one of you.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like Matt Wynn was trying to take it in a direction that the actors couldn't do in the positioning and the way that they are. It's a shame, actually, because when you started reviewing this, I was sat here thinking, do you know, I could actually quite like this. I could actually get into it, but...
Yeah, that's it. I mean, don't not see it. I mean, absolutely see it, because those performances are good and the story is quite engaging. And also, Indira Varma as Jessica, she is just the worst. I'm sorry, I'd have been holding the stepladder for her. She's the worst. Oh God! Within 2 minutes, you want to choke her. She is and we all know that person as well. We all know that exact person. You know what I mean? There's always that one in every group.
Oh yeah,
yeah. She nails it. She really does.
Well, if you want to see it, The Trouble with Jessica is out in cinemas from today, so you can go and see it if you like. Right, we're back next. We're going to talk about The First Omen. Am I right? Is this a prequel?
This is a prequel, yeah, hence the clever title, yeah.
Oh, I thought so. I thought I'd better check, though, because I didn't want to take it for granted. You know what these movie titleists are like sometimes. So we'll see what The First Omen was all about and what it was like with Van in just a minute. Stay there. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen then. Let's move swiftly on to our next movie, which is a prequel, as we figured out at the end of last time. It's The First Omen. So, Van, I don't want to get you to bury the lead or any of that stuff. I'll just let you take it away with what you think.
Yeah, so I'm going to preface this by saying that I am a big fan of The Omen, the 1970s. I think it was 75 or 76, The Omen, which starred Gregory Peck and Lee Wallace as the American ambassador and his wife, who had a young son that the wife didn't realize had died in infancy and had been swapped out with the husband's knowledge and turned out to be the Antichrist. And of course, he is Damien. We kind of mostly know Damien as just the name of the Antichrist in pop culture now, thanks to things like Only Fools and Horses. Right, so that was 1975, 1976, and Damien's kind of about 5 years old in that movie. We now have a movie that is set in 1971 in Rome, where the first movie began, which automatically creates a problem for me as an audience member, because I'm thinking, oh, good Lord, we're not going far in this, are we? So, you have a young nun who... So this is all going to sound so familiar to you. What you have is a young American nun who goes to a convent in Rome, and instead of that one was about taking care of elderly, dying nuns. This one is about taking care of young orphans and basically raising them into the nunnery, as it were. Our titular lead starts to see things around the convent that don't quite look right, and she is fast approached by a wayward, dishevelled pastor, priest, father, whatever he is, Father Brennan, played by Ralph Ineson, who is, of course, the character played by Patrick Troughton in the original Omen. So Doctor Who was in the Omen, if you remember this. He was the priest, the father, whatever he was. And yes, the same character 5 years earlier, played by Ralph Ineson, who gives her a very, very stern warning about one of the children in the convent, a child he has been searching the world for, who should never have been allowed to exist. So have a listen.
My name is Father Brennan. I apologize for startling you. Please, sit with me. This will only take a few minutes. Your name is Margaret, I know. You work at the orphanage. You knew that.
I don't understand. How do you know that?
It's about the girl, Skiana.
Carlita?
You must be very careful, Margaret. Bad things will start to happen around her. Evil things.
No, I have to go now.
No, please. Come see me tonight. St. Rita Cloister, room 42. I'll tell you everything.
First of all, what a voice. Know, right? Oh, what an amazing voice he's got. Like, brilliant. I've just been watching the trailer on mute, as I do generally when we're chatting about these movies. And I've got to say, I mean, they've kept up the fear side of this and the scary and the graphics. And, it's pretty harrowing to watch.
Do you know, this is the weird thing, because it has got some good jump scares. It's a well-made movie. Like, I'm not going to deny it's well-made. But the problem is, it does feel quite rote. And it does succeed more at the jump scares than it does the atmosphere and the tension and the feeling of dread. And... hitching the Omen, brand to that, when a huge part of what made the Omen so iconic is that feeling of dread and terror building, and not so much jump scares. There were some really effective jumps, but they were jumps that had been built to, that you could kind of see coming to an extent, but then they were delivered so well that even when you could see them coming, they were absolutely chilling. This does not have that. This has some directorial flair and style, but other than that, it feels like a really ridiculous prequel. Like, this feels like the kind of thing Sony would have rushed out direct to DVD in the mid to late 2000s, like when they gave us Lost Boys 2 and things like that. The First Omen. Right, true story on this one, right? Because this is how my mind works. You've seen the original Omen, I presume, at some point in your life, right?
A long time ago, yes.
So you remember it begins in Rome in I'm sure it's 75 or 76, with Gregory Peck at the hospital the night that Damien is born. This movie obviously beginning, the minute it popped up with Rome 1971, my brain immediately went, about 5 years before the Omen then. Okay, so this would be about when when the beginning of the Omen would be set. Sorry, the present day in the Omen is like 75, 76. So this would be about that same kind of time. So, if this ends with a CG revival of Gregory Peck being put onto screen and made to give new dialogue, I swear to God, I'm going to burn this place down with me in it. Because, no, we've gone too far at that stage. Now, thankfully, that does not happen. I can't say. There is a nod to Gregory Peck that I thought, okay, that's actually quite restrained by today's standards. They're not Carrie Fisher or Peter Cushinging this. You know what I mean? Although it's weird to me that they would release this so close. I know it's unfortunate that you had the strikes and everything, but this came out quite close to another release that you must have been thinking about when I was giving that plot synopsis. Do you know the one I'm thinking of?
Oh, God, no. Which one? I'm probably going to agree with you.
It was the Sydney Sweeney one, Immaculate, which was only 2 weeks ago. 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was really good. Now, here's the thing about this. This feels kind of so rote that you put it, it's not exactly a narrow field to have this in. This whole nun horror thing. You've recently had the really, really good Immaculate. We've not long had the Nun 2, right? Prior to that, we had Benedetta, which was the Verhoeven one, which was also a supernaturally tinged, nun thing. And then, of course, the original Nun before that as well. And I'm not even going back into history. I'm just talking about in recent years. Like, this is like the last 6 or 7 years. That's kind of the Nun pantheon of horror. You're like, this does not feel like one of the stronger entries. Certainly not up to Immaculate's level. Like, this really does feel like the Asylum mockbuster you'd get to tie in with Immaculate, except it's actually been well made. It's just a shame it's not particularly very atmospheric or scary. Having said that, Nell Tiger Free, who plays the lead in this, I rather liked. Bill Nighy is in there as well as the sort of the head of the convent, the father and head of the convent, and he's just playing it as nice guy Bill Nighy. You know, he's our beloved Bill Nighy, like,
as always,
and that kind of works weirdly in an Omen movie. Charles Dance gets a cameo, which I really liked. I really liked as well. But I think obviously MVP for me, Ralph Ineson. I interviewed the guy once years ago at a Comic-Con. Incidentally, you were talking about his voice, like. I was so because I'm still a big fan of Shooting Fish, and it was the first thing I ever saw him in. Most people know him as Finchy from The Office. He's Finchy in the British version of The Office.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but he'll always be the guy from Shooting Fish to me. So I remember nerding out with him and talking to him about shooting fish in front of his clearly very bored son.
Great voice. Yeah, definitely a great voice. The thing that I totally agree with you with when you said that having it set in Rome again, it kind of makes you feel a little bit rolly-eyed, doesn't it? Like, could it not have been set in Austria and then there have been a reason for them to go to Rome? Or do you know what I mean? Just something a bit bigger. It seems like it's quite kind of introverted in that sense.
I think, for a generation that will... Because let's be honest... No one's seen The Omen these days. Like, below a certain age threshold, most people have not seen The Omen. It's not exactly something that gets shown on telly a lot. So it's not, don't get to revisit it that often. It's not like there's a lot of cult revivals. There's not a lot of mainstream love for The Omen, strangely, because it's a great movie. So I feel like for the audience that have never seen The Omen anyway, this is going to go down gangbusters. It's probably about the right level of scary for them, to be fair. I was reading an article the other day about a generation of TikTokers, apparently, who've been complaining over Netflix adding the 2009, I think it's Vincenzo Natali movie Splice to the service, that it's too scary for them. And I'm just like, wow, that is so candy ass. Splice? Are you kidding me? That's somebody's threshold for, like, the level of terror you can take? Good Lord, we used to be a society. But, yeah. But no, this, if you're someone that doesn't watch, like, the stock and trade of classic horror movies that I would describe The Omen as belonging to, perfectly, shocking enough for you, I would imagine. You're going to feel it's a bit rote otherwise, though.
Okay, well, if you want to make your mind up yourself, you can, because The First Omen is also in cinemas from today.
I will tell you one thing as well. So I was talking to James King about a week before I saw this movie. He was going to an earlier screen. He said, I'm seeing The First Omen later. He goes, what are your expectations? Well, I have absolutely no idea how you do a prequel to The Omen, because the only bit of backstory that we're missing at this stage of the Omen story is the idea that Damien's mum has to, get it on with a jackal. Like, so unless that's the plot of the movie, I have no idea. And do you know what? It comes up quite a bit. So I was not wrong.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. The First Omen is in cinemas from today. Right, 2 movies left. We're going to look at One Night in Millstreet shortly. But next, it's Monkey Man. Stay where you are. We'll be back. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. We've got 2 more movies to talk about. One Night in Millstreet next. Right now, though, Monkey Man, which is directed, co-written and starring Dev Patel. What a legend.
Yes, indeed. This is his directorial debut, and it's a choice. Like when actors say, you know what, I'm going to direct my first movie, that happens all the time. But usually their vanity projects are boring-ass dramas. But not our boy Dev. Oh no. Dev went and did something else entirely. God bless him. Do you want to know what Dev did? Dev went and made his own John Wick. That's what Dev went and did. If I sound so absolutely bewildered...
It looks amazing.
Yeah, if I sound bewildered by this, it's because I'm genuinely that impressed that, you know, like, one of these actors actually went and did something like this, because this is I mad respect for actually, you know, having the swagger and the, you know, the imagination to actually step outside the usual vanity, you know, drama kind of realm. So Dev Patel is on screen, at least, an anonymous young man who we meet basically being paid to take a pounding in crooked fights every night. He does so from behind the mask of Hanuman, the ancient monkey god. And he just seems to be able to take an ungodly level of pain, like it's superhuman the amount of pain he can endure. And the toll, we literally see the toll on his hands that this has taken to him over the years. He starts to work his way up the ranks, gets in with the organisers of the fights, gets in with the promoters, and as we quickly discover, all in the name of a long gestating quest for very bloody revenge. I've got a clip for you, and this is the character we only really hear referred to as Kid, meeting the mother figure, the matriarch in charge of his crime family, and having done her a favour.
Take this.
I don't want charity. What I need is a job.
This is King's. We just don't hire off the street. Where's your references? Your CV? Look, I don't have time for all this. You pass it over.
There's my CV. That's bleach. Chemical, oil. Give me the job no one wants to do. I'll do it. No complaint. This is all I know.
Now, I don't know if this is the case or not, but I would assume being his first role, his first director role, it wouldn't have a really high budget, but it looks like it's got a really high budget. They've done really well with that.
It looks expensive, doesn't it? It really looks expensive.
Yeah.
I say, this was originally intended to go onto Netflix. This was being dumped onto streaming. This wasn't getting a theatrical release originally. But I think Jordan Peele saw it, came on board as a producer sort of after the fact, in the same way that like Tarantino has done for a bunch of films over the years, and basically then used his name as a sort of bargaining chip for, okay, can we release this in cinema if we have, like, from producer Jordan Peele on it? And they've given it that chance. And I'm very, very glad, because it is a movie that really benefits, I think, from that wonderful combination of a massive screen and really close, brutal action. You know what I mean? Like, there are certain movies that know how to work the balance between close-up, tense action and the larger frame format. I'm thinking of things like the Bourne movies in particular. John Wick does very well, and this skews slightly towards the more cartoony John Wick violence than it does the Matt Damon, you know, Jason Bourne type, where it looked like it was down to her. This feels like it's going slightly towards the slightly more glamorized John Wick style, but at the same time, it's kind of a familiar, worn story. Like, we've seen versions of this. I think one of the Skarsgård, whichever Skarsgård it is in Boy Kills World in a few weeks' time, has literally the same story, but the gimmick is that he's mute. But how familiar that story is kind of offset by seeing this movie in this Asian setting, and it feeling like an entrenched world removed enough that it kind of allows this to feel unique and fresh again at the same time. So there is kind of a give and pull there, and it works very, very well. The fight scenes are incredible. I really loved it. It's really great stuff. Didn't realise as well until the end of the movie, Hanuman, the monkey god, is who M'Baku and his tribe worship in the Black Panther movies. I thought, why do I know Hanuman? It's because I always remember M'Baku saying glory to Hanuman, I think it was, in Black Panther. Sharlto Copley is in there as well in a supporting role as well. He's kind of the crooked fight promoter who's, obviously slimy as hell, and he's being played by Sharlto Copley, so you can kind of picture where that's going. I got to know, I very briefly, Vipin Sharma, I think it was, at the premiere for this. I wound up just chatting to he and his wife in the queue to get into the screen. He was telling all about South by Southwest. And I was like, oh, that's a fascinating guy. So I got to hang out with him for 5 minutes. I'm trying to find the name of the actress, Aditu Kalkunti, who plays the matriarch figure. She's brilliantly chilling. I was a very big fan of it. You could hear her in the clip as well. Plays the sternness, but also plays the sternness well, but has just that little hint of give in it at any given time that she's going to indulge you, but it's how much of an indulgence you're going to get. And I really like that performance. I think it's really stern, it really works, and it's really particularly poised and well judged. But say it is mostly about, the Dev Patel performance. It is mostly about the fighting. It is mostly about those action sequences. And on that front, it absolutely delivers. It's not an all-timer, but I do think, come the end of the year, when you've got your action movie podcasts like Action for Everyone's one I listen to, for instance, I think towards the end of the year this might come up. It's refreshingly devoid of guns. It's quite big on the hand-to-hand combat. I could see this might come up with the likes of the A4E crowd, the action Twitter crowd, down the end of the year. But an incredible debut from Dev Patel. Absolutely banging directorial debut from Dev Patel.
Watching the trailer on mute with some of these fight scenes, I feel it would benefit massively from a really good soundtrack, but I'm guessing it hasn't got that.
Not a readily identifiable soundtrack. It has a good soundtrack, obviously, in its native language, but obviously it's not exactly filled with Western hits because of its setting. I just really there is a sequence with there's a chase sequence with Dev Patel where he jumps through a window in this. I was just like, good God, kid! First movie out the gate, well played, son. Oh. I turned into Chiwetel Ejiofor in Four Brothers. I like how you do business. I love that.
This does feel like we're going to see a lot more of Dev Patel and a lot more great stuff like this. I feel he's going to.
Dev Patel roles. He gets around a bit, does Dev? I think.
But I mean, directing. I think there's going to be more directing. Yeah.
If he's teamed up with producer Jordan Peele, believe me, he'll get to direct things, especially if he's directing to this standard. Because it's a really well-delivered, well-executed film. Maybe about 15 to 20 minutes over long, maybe. But absolutely banging debut for Dev Patel. Honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing this again.
Well, there you go. You can see it yourself. Monkey Man is in cinemas, luckily, because it nearly wasn't, in cinemas from today. Right, one last ride then. One Night in Millstreet in just a second. Stay right where you are. We'll be back. Hello and welcome back to Offscreen for one last ride. I'm actually really looking forward to finding out about our final movie. I still dabble with boxing. I trained for quite a while. One Night in Millstreet is a documentary, and I'll hand over to you really because it's about Chris Eubank essentially and the big fight he had with Steve Collins.
Well, actually, yeah, but it's from the opposite perspective. So the idea is this is largely told from Steve Collins' perspective. That the movie, incidentally, is funded by the Irish documentary board, so you're very clear as to what angle this is coming from. So this is the story of the underdog, who took on and beat Chris Eubank in a prize fight. And it's worth noting that Eubank is also an active participant in the movie, so I don't feel like he's getting shortchanged by this. He's very much in on this doc. He's going hard. He's very honest, right? So it largely is the story of the prize fight between, as you say, Eubank and Collins in the early 90s. The story of how it wasn't a title fight, it was a prize fight. And the idea here is that you have the underdog who adopted a very different style of training for this and fell under the auspices of Dr. Tony Quinn, whom I'm just fascinated by after this documentary. I'll tell you why after. But he trained his fighter in the opposite way to Eubank, who was running 6 miles a day, things like that. Because as Dr. Quinn himself said, what good is being able to run 6 miles a day? You only need to go for 3 minutes at a time. So I trained you in the last 3 minutes. This, of course, leads up to the fight that took place that fateful night in Millstreet. Have a listen.
Getting the fight was like a Rocky story.
Steve was very clever, and he would think of ways to get under an opponent's skin, but I'd no idea what hell was about to be unleashed.
He's the champion, right? This is mind games.
Tony Quinn used to sell these hypnotism tapes.
I knew nothing about boxing, by the way.
I'm gonna win.
The sort of sinister twist to this was that Tony Quinn had trained him not to feel pain.
What a load of rubbish.
Legal cheating.
This is war.
See, this is the fight, if I remember, this is the one where Steve Collins gave a massive left hook, and that's what sparked him out, isn't it?
Yes, I believe that's what happened. But the narrative we are given here, and I don't remember this when it happened. And with comparable ages, I don't imagine you remember this particular fight. Have your own memories of it either. But this element of Dr. Tony Quinn, as you could hear in the clip, I was not aware of this, that he was a hypnotist. And that he just spouted what, according to everyone else, was complete rubbish that was believable to literally nobody except also, weirdly, Chris Eubank. So only the two fighters were buying this guy's nonsense, and everybody else was just like, it was complete shash. He was just speaking complete drivel. And the pair of them were just lapping it up. And like you'd hear, he was trying to hypnotize him not to feel pain and psych out his opponent, these things. Which... It's weird that you have this story, and at the same time you have Chris Eubank being as jubilant as he is, like joyously, infectiously jubilant through this, as he takes you through the process of entertaining his audience through, the campaign of the fight, the run-up to the fight, things like that, and how he knew just how to stage it and how to phrase it and how to carry himself, because what's going to work best in this situation. And he's very analytical, but also very self-aware and kind of cutesily funny about it. It's the most I've ever enjoyed listening to Chris Eubank, ever. And that's the weird thing. It's not about him. It's more about Steve Collins, who's a likeable enough guy, sure. But Eubank stealing all his thunder, as indeed was the case, I'd imagine, during the actual campaign.
Yeah, that's the thing about Chris Eubank, though, isn't it? Like, he always stands out because he's just the way he is, really, I suppose. And as you said, he does and has always looked at boxing as a performance rather than a sport, I think.
Very much so. I tell you something, maybe it's the Sheffield boy in me, but I can't wait until we finally get the Prince Naz one of these. The Prince Nazim. That would be a banging doc. Like, give me a proper high-end. This isn't that high-end, by the way. This very much feels like a sort of made-for-the-sports network filler content kind of a thing. Like on Sky Sports between matches, if they've got like an hour and a half, an hour and 15 minutes to go, they might shove something like this in, or maybe it's on the night of a fight that might tie in something. It's that kind of thing. It feels like it's been made relatively cheaply. It's not like a high. This is not an Asif Kapadia, as I like to say, on the biographical documentary front. But an enjoyable enough story that is mostly dominated by just how enthusiastic Chris Eubank always is. He's just a compelling presence. Yeah.
He's just so eccentric. He's just fun to watch, isn't he? In fact, I met him once. I went to the opening of a rather upper-class restaurant bar, cocktail bar. This is going back about 15 years. And he turned up in his enormous truck.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Well,
literally,
I'm just a fan. I'm still a fan of his monocle phase. I'm not going to lie. It takes a very certain man to pull off a monocle. You know what I mean? Like, nah, I ain't that brave. Sorry, man.
He can pull off anything, if I'm honest. I think he gets away with it all, doesn't he?
Pull off a monocle, clearly.
So, anyone who's really not a massive boxing fan would still enjoy this because of the information and the stuff that's in it.
There's an enjoyable enough story. It's maybe not the great big clash of the titans that the film would like it to be. It's kind of a more demure story, but you go along with it basically because you are enjoying the time. You're enjoying Eubank more than anything. And also the story of Dr. Tony Quinn, which is absolutely bonkers. And I must know everything there is to know about this man because he's crazy. It's honestly it's worth honestly, the stuff this guy was peddling, it's just worth listening to. It's great. Really, you could hear him in the clip. He's like, I know nothing about boxing. You're like, okay.
Sure. so they're going to employ him to train them because he knows nothing.
Yep.
I like the principle of that. I like the premise. One night in Millstreet cinemas from today, if you would like to go and enjoy. Right, I think I already know the answer to this, but let's do our movie of the week then, Van. Which one are you going for and why?
Oh, Monkey Man! I
thought so.
Time with Monkey Man. It was one of those you grip the armchair, you punch the air kind of thing. You gets a visceral response out of you, but also just amazing Dev Patel performance. Sterling, like I say, sterling first film for Dev Patel. I can't get over it. Like, this really blew me away. And of course, Jordan Peele's got his name on it as well. If that's a seal of approval you need beyond my own.
Wow, that was predictable. I knew that was going to be the word you'd choose, and rightfully so from what you said. Right, let's look at next week then. When we come back, we've got a few movies to talk about. Opponent, what's this one about?
Yeah, Opponent. This is a drama about an Iranian family of refugees, and they go to Sweden, and the dad sort of like discreetly gets back into the forbidden to him world of wrestling, like joins a local wrestling club, I think. So I'm intrigued by that. Sounds amusing. I'm going to be honest. Close Your Eyes is a Spanish drama. I believe that's a Spanish drama. We've also got Bleeding Love, which is a movie that stars both Ewan McGregor and his actual real-life daughter as a father and daughter. So, I don't know.
He's doing a Will Smith.
It might have a tinge of the vanity about it. I don't know. Jury's out on that one. We'll find out next week. We have The Teacher's Lounge, which is the new Curzon drama, foreign language teacher drama, which I'm looking forward to. Anything with the Curzon badge usually gets a look in from me. Civil War, the latest and allegedly final film from writer-director Alex Garland, who previously gave us Ex Machina, Annihilation.
Great film.
Yeah, this guy is apparently he's so disenfranchised with filmmaking after this that he's retiring. He's not going to do anymore, which is a great way to promote your movie the week before it comes out. So we can look forward to Civil War next week. But of course, I think the big game in town next week, in terms of what actually might shift a ticket or two at the box office, is going to be Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse biopic, which just looks wonderfully terrible. Like, it looks like a panto. I can't wait. This looks like college drama level. Pour it in me, son. Yes.
Because I saw her last one and I really loved it, so I've got high hopes for this, actually. I'm a bit gutted that you said it looks rubbish.
I mean, the documentary, the Asa Kapadia documentary, Amy, is an absolute masterpiece. And to be honest, was all that you ever needed to do with it. This just looks like really bad, made for Channel 4, kind of cosplay level kind of production here. And yet it's directed by Sam Taylor Johnson. So, God help us. I honestly, no. I'm dreading this, but I am going to be seeing it, so I'll let you know how I get on.
I hope you'll be eating your words on that, but we'll find out, of course, won't we?
I hope so.
That's all we've got time for then. We will be back next week with Off Screen. Until then, I've been Adam Ball.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall return.